Hello, my name is Holly Purchase and I'll be your webinar host today. We're expecting the presentation to last for about 40 minutes, followed by a question and answer session. Please note that we'll be muting the telephone lines during the webinar, except for the speakers, so if you have any questions, please submit them using the tool question bar on screen. We'll be collating all the questions at the end and we'll look to answer as many as possible. We'll also be providing a written response to delegates of all the questions received during the webinar. Following the presentation, we'll be posting a copy of the video from this session onto the Prism ID website and will notify all registered attendees when it's available. In today's webinar, we'll firstly look at things to consider when managing a global labelling system, such as whether this means labeling with different systems across the globe or using one harmonized labeling system, how to manage meeting so many localized and variable regulatory requirements, considering all your products and the places you'll be shipping them to, how you manage label real estate in regards to content like data, symbols, and images without creating or drowning under a mountain of labels, and how will you protect your corporate branding standards across your global enterprise, whether internally or with third-party contracts and manufacturers and distribution centers. Secondly, we will discuss some of the available options for label lifecycle management so that you can meet the challenges of today while being prepared and flexible to meet the challenges of tomorrow. Thirdly, we'll look at deploying a validated global application and some tips for overcoming those challenges. And lastly, we'll discuss the key areas where some leaders in the medical device market have become more efficient, cost-effective, and in more control throughout their labeling operations, from deployment of their global labeling solutions right through to their production printing today. There will then be the question and answer session. Today, we have two specialist speakers, Andy Lloyd and Hal Plant. Andy Lloyd is a global program manager at Prism ID, overseeing multi-regional, highly regulated projects for some of our largest clients. He has over 25 years' experience within the pharmaceutical industry, developing and delivering business solutions. Educated at Portsmouth University, his career has included consultancy and directorship roles at companies such as Proscape Technologies, Wyeth, and American Cyanamid. Hal Plant is a US business development manager within Prism ID. He has 10 years' experience in helping medical device and life sciences organizations achieve greater control, visibility, and efficiencies through their labeling operations while ensuring FDA compliance. Through Hal's experience in working with customer teams in quality and regulatory, manufacturing, supply chain management, marketing, and packaging, he has gained the cross-functional knowledge and insight to help clients identify potential risks and opportunities for improvement in meeting both their own internal labeling demands and those mandated by regulatory agencies such as the FDA. Without too much further ado, let me hand you over to Andy.
Okay, good. Hello everybody, and thank you, Holly, and welcome to the webinar today. In my session, I'm going to explore some of the issues around having fragmented systems deployed across the globe, and then be looking at some of the benefits around implementing a global solution. Now, many of you may be familiar already that there are a huge number of challenging managing application systems in a global environment. This is particularly important where validation is a critical component, and the system is deployed in multiple locations within a country, and these are magnified yet further when there are many locations in different countries, different continents around the world. When it comes to labeling, this introduces a significant risk of compliance issues in a global enterprise. In broad terms, we're going to, the issues and opportunities, if you like, challenges, fall into two distinct areas. Those primarily associated with the commercial and business community, and of course technology. So in our time together today, my colleague Hal will explore the business areas, and they're shown on the slide on the right here. And I'm going to talk around some observations around those technology challenges. Now, labeling systems, in common with many other business functions, where there are different solutions implemented, introduces a number of risks. And we're going to consider a few of these, including multi-vendor management, platform control, support and subject matter expertise, and the effort that goes along with those, managing security and scalability, validation effort and process, and also about managing growth within your organization. So firstly, let's just look at multi-vendor management, where you have a number of different application labeling solutions deployed around the world or in multiple sites. There are quite often different software packages, each with their own support level agreements, maintenance, commitments, and of course contracts. From a platform control perspective, multiple labeling software packages each require their own integration and interfaces to your ERP, PLM or MES systems. This also leads then to the area of support and subject matter expertise and the effort involved in all of that. So managing each different application, yet from a corporate perspective we're trying to build a cohesive platform. Managing security and scalability with fragmented systems introduces the problems of keeping up with change within the business, both from a technology and growth point of view. And of course the validation effort and process change to support that from initial deployment for each of those individual applications and as systems and applications are upgraded and introduced. So managing growth is another area when you grow organically as you introduce new products to market, but also as you enter new markets, and of course at the moment those are Eastern Bloc and China and so forth. So we're going to look at these things very much from a technology perspective. How do we, quite often we find that organizations find themselves trying to not only juggle a mixture of labeling technologies, each dependent upon their own infrastructures and operating systems. From a client PC point of view, we have the operating system scenarios of XP and Windows 7. From a server platform point of view, Server 2003 versus 2008. And database platforms, anything from simple database technology through enterprise database platforms such as SQL Server 2005-2008 and Oracle 10G R2, and the challenge of moving to Oracle 11G as Oracle 10 goes off support. And frequently we're faced with the opportunity of the next and best from Microsoft by way of Internet Explorer 6, 7, 8 and 9, and who else knows what's coming down the line. Each of these technology changes bring challenges to our labeling software solution. So lack of labeling software commonality across the enterprise can make it almost impossible to standardize on your labeling process across the business, and of course this introduces the risk of non-conformity and regulatory code breaches. I'm sure many of us know that managing change is never easy. The operating system upgrades often affect the applications that run on them, and the application systems themselves can mean that there are often configuration and system software changes that need to be made to the operating system. And this means there are many occasions when there is significant time and cost or perhaps not making it possible to take advantages of the latest technology updates. The other area that we've kind of touched on is around system integration into your ERP and PLM systems. This is a key benefit in any labeling solution, especially where our goal is to introduce one version of the truth. And when it comes to production data, such as product and batch data, not number, and in our labeling system we are really trying to minimize or indeed eliminate the need for manual data entry, avoid duplication, and reduce the frequency that errors can occur at print time. So having many applications means that there are many different interfaces, each of which requires its own support and maintenance expertise, increasing support costs, and you often find yourself in a situation where you have fragmented subject matter expertise on each of those different applications and interfacing, making support, to say the least, challenging. From a data point of view, fragmented data sources mean it's almost impossible to leverage the benefits that having one single version of the truth can bring across the enterprise. And if we're able to do this, we can maximize control and minimize the amount of expertise and support effort required. I think the other key area from our experience would be around the process compliance point of view. The demands on process compliance and the regulatory aspect is a key area for medical device industries, and bridging that technology gap with SOPs can often make it difficult to ensure that things are being done properly and that we're in compliance. Quite often in a fragmented scenario, there are many paper-based processes in place which make it even more challenging and risky, making a complex process even more complicated. Quite often we need access from third-party suppliers into central and corporate applications. And at this point, we have quite often find ourselves faced with little or no control of what they do. Now, are you able to define, you are able to define rather what needs to be done, what should be done, but how do you really know if your processes are being followed? Can you demonstrate and provide objective evidence that compliance is being, for third parties, is being delivered? So, you know, approval processes are complicated. Different companies with different software can often lead to the ability of a third party to provide an access to PDFs, and we resort to hard copy and fax, which is again an area where we lose control. So in this situation, you very often have no visibility about what labels are being printed, is the data being entered correctly, how many labels are printed, are they being used appropriately, if they weren't used, what actually happened to them. So there's a number of areas around there with fragmented systems that need to be considered. Supporting technology and applications, I kind of touched on a little bit already, but from an IT system support, many systems across the globe can, as I'm sure many of you are aware, be expensive, both to update, maintain, and definitely to revalidate. This leads to disparate skill sets across your organization, with pockets of application-specific knowledge across the enterprise, and certainly hampers the ability to provide support globally. So I'd like to kind of look at the validation aspects a little bit. Divesting responsibility of validation in any way can come back and haunt their corporate environment. Not only does it harm your brand equity when something goes wrong at any single facility or division, it's not focused there from a global and compliance perspective, it's seen as a corporation failure. So the biggest challenge comes from having to support, manage and implement control applications from different vendors and being able to solve local issues. So in general, evolutionary systems have little common ground with the rest of the enterprise applications deployed across the organization. So significant areas around opportunities around platform management. So as we can see here, with multiple servers, database and client technology across 3 different sites, this leads to ongoing multiple application changes, and that means that management challenges multiplied for each solution across each site and each platform. So it's an exponential growth. So how does introducing a global system make these challenges somewhat more manageable? Well, already we can see that we've got a simplified topology here. A single implementation of a true global system certainly makes these challenges more manageable. It doesn't make them go away completely, but it does make them more manageable. So rather than a solution deployed on whatever happens to be convenient to a particular vendor or to a particular site, we have the opportunity to introduce a planned and structured platform for a vendor that simplifies the challenges of managing multiple and local deployments on multiple platforms. So this reduces the management and cost and significantly reduces our exposure to compliance failure. So global architecture versus a site architecture. So global architectures do introduce some of their own challenges. So a solution deployed on a carefully considered and strategically managed infrastructure rather than whatever is left local and short-sighted decision still offers a choice of deployment. Deployments to either virtual or physical servers can optimize the investment of your hardware whilst also providing the ability to load balance and manage spikes in your network activity and allow you to be in a significantly better position to manage failover and keep your business moving forward. Using standard and well understood operating systems and database technologies, minimizing the integrations rather than whatever is to hand, enables us to minimize the technology and subject matter expertise, maximizing uptime, delivering good customer service, speed and reliability to drive your business forward, whilst not having a broad and disparate group of people with specific subject matter expertise, enables us to have much more control. Having a single global architecture enables us to control security patching rather than other ad hoc patching practice, and that mitigates the risk of overlooked gaps across a mixed bag of technologies. And as we previously discussed, validation is absolutely vital, and validation is a significant, we find it frequently significantly time intensive and therefore expensive. So taking the time out to plan for validation is into your global system and its architecture can expedite deployment of technology, ensure that your system solution is validated, reducing time and cost, and is a key element in any project plan. By having a global solution enables us to be more proactive than reactive, and the ability to use enterprise support tools for performance, providing availability and system health monitoring rather than waiting till some disaster strikes. I think the other thing that happens with a global infrastructure and architecture is that technology resources needed to understand an industry standard set of best practices and tools rather than vendor-specific ones enables us to access a broader talent pool when a global solution is supported by supported by many than a disparate few. So when building a corporate platform, what are the areas that we need to consider? Certainly flexibility and scalability to cope with organic growth within your own within your own world, but also to take into account how do we bring in new organisations and plants through mergers and acquisitions that take place, and also we need to introduce our product into new markets. How do we maximise that opportunity? So the system needs to support and adapt to change in a regulatory framework. Unicode support for all languages, the ability to comply with any new patient or usage safety statement structures, and the ability to support the required barcode and symbologies and symbols in a validated and controlled manner. So we need to consider the best means to properly add and approve new products and labels and data information in order to enable us to ship new products to both existing and emerging markets. So where there is one, obviously where labeling is one of the latest stages in the production process, any label system outage can result in the inability to ship product, which is a significant risk. So to avoid single points of failure in a global environment where servers need to be taken offline for maintenance, how do we make sure that this is covered? So we would need to make sure that there is good DR and load balancing in place, and from a PRISM perspective we're able to provide consulting expertise in this area that will enable us to prepare for and manage network outages, connectivity changes, and address network speed issues. So in a centralized, we feel strongly that in a single centralized solution is definitely a best way forward, but that doesn't mean to say that we're stuck to one centrally supported infrastructure. It is possible for us to look at architectures where we can have regional deployments as well. So there are many options that are open to us, and we can explore those both internally and externally, and we're able to help with these. So hopefully I've given a bit of a flavour around some of the technology challenges for you to consider, and now it's the opportunity to hand over to Hal, who will be happy to sort of talk around his observations around the commercial and business issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andy. So continuing on, the business user related challenges of delivering a global labeling solution can include any, if not all, the following areas. For starters, process differences, ensuring that your future enterprise-wide labeling application has the ability to offer central control of all your labeling activities, and at the same time, offer the required local autonomy to meet local or divisional operational variations across your business. Also, product differences and label complexity. The challenges in managing these areas are multiplied by each country you ship product to. A far too common practice is to manage this by creating a label for every product that's ending up with a mountainous 1-to-1 ratio of label to product, or worse, creating even more labels to manage country-specific requirements where a single product has been given a product code for each country it will be shipped to, resulting in more product codes and labels than actual product. With UDI looming, the ill-advised practice of assigning numerous product codes to a single product to manage country-specific labels will become a thing of the past. Next, the review and approval process. Typically, this can be a site-by-site process relying on manual steps and functions facilitated by the emailing of PDF images of labels or passing along printouts of labels attached to a routing sheet of some sort, or even worse, FedExing hard copies of label designs and its routing sheet across the enterprise if reviewers sit in different geographical regions. This can take an unnecessary amount of time to cycle, and review jobs can fall through the cracks. Then there's the lack of visibility, control, and accountability in the review process. Today, how do you manage where a label is installed in the review process? How do you ensure that what is currently being reviewed is the latest version of a pending label, data, or image? This brings us to WYSIWYG. Everyone speaks about WYSIWYG. How do you achieve this if the label in the review process is unable to be test printed with variable data, such as different product descriptions within a product family for which that label format will be used for, and how will that label manage different amounts of data when displayed in either English, German, Russian, Hebrew, Turkish, Chinese, or Spanish? So this brings us along to the data management in production print. Data management, without a true global approach or mechanism in place, commonly each site within an enterprise over time becomes a silo for their own labeling data and unique in the manner in which each site stores that label data. Without a true enterprise-wide system in place, this can be a nightmare, if not impossible. How do you leverage data that can be used across the enterprise? Is this managed by redundant data entry efforts or recreating the wheel of data? How do you manage version data, ensuring that only approved data is used in production print today? Labels and label data live in a state of constant change for a number of reasons. Managing this with a purpose-built, enterprise-wide labeling solution can make this a much easier global task to manage. Now, bringing all this together, managing data at the time of production print across the global enterprise. How do you manage destination labeling for products which can be produced at a single or multiple facilities which then will be shipped to, say, any one of 30 countries around the world? Are you managing local languages as an image pasted into a label design? What about multilingual or regional language labels? Is managing label real estate becoming a growing challenge? Or how about the practice of adding all languages to your labels to cover the basis? Is your product now packed in a larger package than needed in order to support the size of the label? And from a marketing perspective, how do you enforce your corporate branding standards? Does the look and feel of your labels appear consistent regardless of which facility labeled your product? And besides controlling the version of label or data that is being printed, how do you control the quantity of print? How do you reconcile all the print jobs across the global enterprise so to account for each label being printed as used, unused, changed, damaged or destroyed. And in your world of production print across your enterprise, how do you create a single record of truth as to what has been printed, when, and by whom? Do you have the mechanism to capture each and every one of these events in a secured audit log, which will stand up to an FDA audit? And this takes us to reprints. Without a secure audit log in place to capture all critical actions within your labeling environment, do you need to recreate the label and check to be sure it matches the originally printed label? When a secure audit log is an integral part of your labeling system, reprints can be properly and easily generated, simply calling up a previously printed label in your audit log. And one more thing to consider before we move on to regulatory. If there comes a time when you need to transfer the production and labeling of a product from one facility to another, outside the production equipment, would you also have to swap out the labeling software, move the labeling data, revalidate this labeling environment, and retrain the users to manage this change? Everything lives in a state of change. It is how we manage that change which impacts our ability to achieve success. Now on to regulatory. We just discussed the importance of an audit log. In the event of a product recall or FDA audit, are you able to supply an audit log going back 5 years and within a reasonable short period of time? In the absence of use of a harmonized global labeling solution, how do you effectively manage the vast variability of labeling requirements for each country you ship product to? Do you have a global strategy and system in place to manage and control the content and versions of such things as product descriptions, instructions for use, safety images, hazardous or dangerous warning messages, languages, fonts, and regulatory markings necessary for each country you ship to? And at the end of the day, or shall we say at the end of the day for each time zone in which your global operations take place, for those companies with potentially many different labeling packages and processes, are you certain you are firmly compliant to Quality Systems Regulation CFR Part 820? And lastly, growth and acquisition. Considering the probability of your organizational growth, how would you plan to expand and control your labeling operations to support your company's growth as well into new markets? If you were to replicate or expand out what you're using today, would this be the best option to support your growing labeling needs and ensure that labeling is being executed properly across the globe? And again, would you have the visibility to know whether it is or is not? And next, achieving central control. A system with central control must be able to support and enforce corporate policies throughout the entire labeling lifecycle, meaning having a harmonized label solution in place to create global workflow. Also, having the ability to create a global standard throughout your labeling operations is key, and yet flexible enough to be able to meet country-specific labeling demands. And from the regulatory standpoint, having the ability to meet the demands and requirements of the FDA, such as preparing for the UDI, meeting the standards of the GHS, or meeting the EU's MDD directive, is, as some would say, just as important as having the best product on the market. Now, drilling down into the key areas to consider when planning a standardization strategy, first starting off with formats and branding. Having the ability to lock down the look and feel of your labels and data, thus ensuring that your product is easily identifiable in the marketplace. What are the data elements in play? For example, product codes, product descriptions, images, logos, translations, GTID numbers, lot numbers, batch numbers, serial numbers, print quantity, addresses, on and on. Where are you going to house this data, be it the product data or the transactional data? And what about the mechanisms you're going to employ to access this transactional product data when called upon in production print? This data may be one of the largest living elements in your organization. Relying on a human decision or action to select or key in the right data element at the right time based on a production order is one of the riskiest operating procedures to count on your staff to make. A purpose-designed global labeling solution properly integrated with your key business systems can mitigate this risk. Moving on to version control. Lots of moving parts, whether it is a rebranding initiative, a change in regulatory policy, a shelf life extension, a change to an instruction for use or dangerous or hazardous warning statement. Labels live in a state of change. With a standardized global labeling solution in place, you have the proper controls and enforcement procedures to manage version control and ensure that only the latest approved labels and data are available to those in the print environments. And lastly, production print internally and by your third-party contract manufacturers and distribution centers. Third parties can play a key role in getting your product to market faster. With a centrally managed global labeling solution, you can still have control, visibility, and accountability into all actions by these partners. Today you have the control as to what label and data your contract manufacturer is printing, and which version of that label and data they're printing. Hint, they should only have access to the latest approved version of either. You also want to be able to control and account for how many labels they printed and who printed them. Remember, your partners are labeling your products on your behalf. Same goes for your distribution centers. It is your responsibility as to what is labeled on your product when it goes to market. This is a critical activity in the ability to trace and track your product in the marketplace. You should have control and auto-log information as to what they're printing, such as which labels, which languages, which symbols, how many were printed, and if this is a serialized print, which serialized numbers for that order shipment. To recap, what the global labeling means for your company, managing your labeling operations with different systems across the globe, or using a single harmonized labeling system, in either case, the successful execution of your daily labeling operations is dependent upon your business users, clearly defined procedures, and the choice and type of labeling solution deployed to support your business users and enforce your defined procedures. In our experience, it is best to use a single harmonized labeling system and strategy, allowing for central control blended with local autonomy, managing differences in site-by-site or division-by-division manufacturing and printing processes, and achieving optimal management and control of variable, global, and localized label printing. As Andy mentioned earlier, consider the validation requirements in planning for a global rollout strategy of a labeling application, whether a traditional thick client or a web-based environment. When it comes to validating a web-based labeling solution, some of the advantages are, first, ease of deployment throughout the manufacturing sites, meaning no need to install and validate labeling software on each and every workstation where any labeling function needs to occur. A significant time and cost savings is the mitigation of an enormous paper trail of validation docs and running these validation scripts across your enterprise, one workstation at a time. Thirdly, from a licensing cost perspective, there is an advantage of reducing the number of licenses by taking advantage of current users rather than traditional workstation-based licenses. An ongoing advantage, whenever updates and upgrades are available, it is much easier and swifter to revalidate a web-based solution rather than every workstation. This may cost your IT staff a loss in some frequent flyer miles, as they would not have the reason to visit each site and revalidate each workstation as part of an upgrade. But on the upside, this will save your organization a significant amount of time, effort, and money. Still, some things to keep in mind when considering a web-based labeling environment to take advantage of the validation benefits. As we all work under the view of the FDA, your labeling environment still needs to be a closed system. There is a proven solution available to the market to ensure FDA CFR Part 11 compliance in a web environment. As with all internet or intranet application, bandwidth could be an issue if not properly addressed as part of your global strategy. Again, there are a number of scenarios which can be considered to properly meet your uptime and resiliency requirements. And for traditional client-server labeling environments, there are benefits such as a labeling software license at every workstation is guaranteed, and there may be fewer issues with bandwidth or internet connectivity. And moving on to some things to be aware of. Many organizations do not take the opportunity to create systems for the future and instead focus on implementation and replicating the features and functions of a previous system. Also, ensure that your business users have a chance to contribute to the requirements gathering, but do not allow them to limit the scope of what the business is in need of when looking towards the future. And take the time to think things through. Once the requirements have been reviewed and agreed to, try to limit the changes to your user requirements while your project is in motion. And once your project starts, ensure that any changes are subject to a robust change control process. And in wrapping up, A quick summary of the benefits of a global harmonized labeling printing system are centralized control over all label designs and data, meaning greater flexibility in managing change and growth, one system to support, one system to validate, one system to train upon, and visibility and accountability throughout the labeling lifecycle across the enterprise. Expedite the time it takes to review and approve your labels. Manage the routes labels must traverse and monitor its stage in the cycle to mitigate bottlenecks and the risk of reviewers reviewing dated material. There is greater flexibility in moving your production and distribution center labeling operations from one facility to another when deemed necessary by your business, and greater secured accessibility and reliability for use by your business users and by approved third parties. The ability to define and enforce your user access permissions within your labeling environment based on your business user's role, function, and location. A single record of truth. The ability to capture all critical actions with electronic signatures within your labeling environment, which will be stored as an uneditable electronic record within a secure encrypted audit log, which will stand up to an FDA audit. And lastly, a single harmonized labeling system. Implemented following a well-conceived global strategy ensures global control, efficient validation, ability to take advantage of updates, and ensures seamless platform management across the enterprise. Many global medical device and life science companies trust Prism ID to secure validated labeling solutions. Our clients are global customers with global projects meeting global needs, and here is an overview of some of our clients. So let me hand the webinar back to Holly for any questions and answers, and thank you very much for your time and attendance.
Thank you, Andy, and thank you, Hal. Please bear with us for a while we collate some of the questions that have come in during the presentation. If you have any additional questions that you would like to submit to either Andy or Hal, please do so now using the questions tool on screen, which is on your right-hand side. We'll try to answer as many as possible, but we'll be also providing a written response afterwards to all the questions that have been asked. Thank you. Okay, thank you everyone for waiting. We'll now just go through to some of the questions that have come in. So firstly, I think I'll pass this one over to Andy. How much work in-house does this type of solution take to implement, and would I need to put a dedicated team onto it?
Thanks, whoever asked the question, and to Holly. Of course, with any system, there are many different variables, but typically a project can be anywhere between 6, 9 and 12 months to actually manage and deploy. With regard to the dedicated team, in our experience, I think we would say that a dedicated team is certainly preferable because even if it's not, it would be a major part of their role within the organisation to get it done, consuming an absolute minimum, I would say, of 75% of their time. So, in honesty, you may as well go the whole hog and have a dedicated team. I think there are some areas where we can offer support in that area, but nevertheless, I think subject matter expertise within your own organisation is critical to the success of a project and does require that full-time focus. Otherwise, things tend to drag on.
Great. The second question that's come in is how can a web-based solution be used safely externally at partners, suppliers, and customers? Andy, do you want to take that one also?
Okay. So again, there are a number of different options available with system access and security. I think one option and typical would be VPN access, and there are a number of security options outside of that, but also there are a number of different security configurations within Prism, for example, but there are a number of different ways of handling that. But VPN is a favourite and well tried and industry standard.
Okay, let's try Hal probably for the next question that's come in. The question is, if we're implementing a solution such as this, where does the FDA compliance sit? Is it with us, or is it with the solution provider?
Certainly with the customer. We can certainly, based on our projects we've worked on, offer a great deal of best practices and suggestions, but at the end of the day, it's going to be you, the customer, that needs to see it to the FDA and present what you're doing and improve what you have done. So we can certainly help, but at the end of the day, it's the customer that needs to stand up to the FDA.
Okay. The next question that's come in is, how long in total would this type of project take to roll out from beginning to end?
Okay. So we've already kind of talked around the aspects of a sort of anywhere between 6 and 12-month project. The customized solutions that PRISM gets involved with, again, would fall into the 6 to 9 month time frame, so working as partners on customer projects. But in addition to that, depending on the number of sites and locations and complexity of the environment, that can add easily another 3, 4, or even 6 months for a global implementation.
Great. And I think this will be our final question, because we're now starting to run short of time. Is there an online demo that I can watch of the solution that's available? Hal, would you like to take that?
Sure. There isn't an online demonstration downloadable for our software. It is an end-to-end solution. The way we typically work is we can visit with you, discuss your requirements, challenges, things that you're looking to address from a labeling perspective, and then share a meaningful demonstration keying in on what our solution offers tied to what you're looking for. And that's really the best and most meaningful means to evaluate our solution against what you're looking for.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, everybody, for participating today. We will wrap up here, but as mentioned earlier, we will be providing written responses to the questions that were asked just now, and also there have been a few more that have come through, and we'll make sure that there are answers to all of those sent out to all registrants. We hope that you've enjoyed the presentation and found it informative. For further information on PRISM ID, please visit www.prismid.com. Or also, we do have a Twitter feed as well, which is @PRISMID, or email us at info@prismid.com. Both of those addresses are up on the final slide. Thanks again, and we hope that you enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.